I'm Jessica Mitchell, 26, and cars have been my passion since I could barely walk. While most kids had teddy bears, I slept with toy wrenches and miniature cars. For years, I saved every penny for my dream, a 1967 Ford Mustang that needed complete restoration. I poured my heart, soul, and savings into bringing that beauty back to life, only for my parents to sell it behind my back to bail out my irresponsible sister. They thought that was the end of it. They had no idea I would make sure my sister paid back every single cent with interest. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to see more stories about standing up for yourself even against family. Growing up in suburban Minnesota, I was the odd one out in many ways. While other girls in my neighborhood played with dolls or joined dance classes, I was in our garage with my dad, fascinated by engines and mechanical parts. My father, Brian Mitchell, was an accountant by profession, but a car enthusiast by passion. Weekends in our house meant garage time, the sweet smell of motor oil, and the satisfying clink of tools against metal. I was around 7 when Dad first let me help with an oil change on his Chevy. I remember how carefully he explained each step, not dumbing it down despite my age. My mother, Diane, would watch from the garage door, shaking her head but smiling. My sister Amanda, 3 years older than me, never understood our obsession. "It's just dirty and loud," she'd complain before retreating to her room to talk on the phone with friends. The contrast between Amanda and me couldn't have been more stark. She was social, popular, and conventionally feminine. I was the tomboy with perpetually oil-stained fingernails who could name every muscle car from the 1960s by the time I was 9. Dad tried to include Amanda in our projects, but her interest never materialized. Instead, they bonded over shopping trips and reality TV shows. When I turned 10, Dad took me to my first classic car show in Minneapolis. That's where I saw it, a perfectly restored 1967 Ford Mustang in candy apple red. The owner, an elderly gentleman named Walter, let me sit behind the wheel, and something clicked inside me. The smell of the leather, the gleaming dashboard, the perfect curves of the body, I was in love. "Someday, Jesse," Dad said, noticing my expression, "we'll restore one together. That'll be our big project." From that day forward, everything in my life revolved around that promise. My school projects always had an automotive angle, a science fair entry about combustion engines, an economics paper on the classic car market, an art project featuring detailed drawings of Mustang evolution through the decades. My teachers learned to expect the car theme from me, and some encouraged it while others suggested I broaden my horizons. When I hit high school, I was the only girl who signed up for auto shop. Mr. Peterson, the teacher, initially seemed concerned, but after I correctly diagnosed a timing issue on a troublesome engine that had stumped half the class, he became my biggest advocate. The boys in class were skeptical at first, some making predictable jokes, but that didn't last long. By junior year, I was the one they came to when they couldn't figure something out. At 16, I started working after school at Wilson's Garage, a local repair shop. Old man Wilson was hesitant to hire a teenage girl, but my dad vouched for my skills. I started sweeping floors and organizing tools, but within months, I was helping with basic repairs. By senior year, I had my own regular customers who specifically asked for me. My graduation from high school highlighted the difference in how my parents saw Amanda and me. When Amanda graduated 3 years earlier, they surprised her with a brand new Honda Civic. Nothing fancy, but still a new car. When my graduation came around, I received a nice watch. Mom explained that since I could fix cars, I'd be better off buying something used that I could work on myself. The logic made sense, but it still stung. College was another area where Amanda and I diverged. She attended an expensive private university to study communications, with our parents covering most costs. I enrolled at the state university for mechanical engineering, working 2 jobs to minimize student loans. Between classes, I worked at an auto parts store and picked up weekend shifts at a restoration shop specializing in classics. On my 18th birthday, I opened a dedicated savings account labeled the Mustang Fund. Every extra dollar went into it: tips, tax returns, birthday money, overtime pay. My roommates thought I was crazy to live on ramen noodles while having thousands sitting in an account I refused to touch, but they didn't understand the dream. Throughout college, I dated occasionally, but relationships often fizzled when guys realized cars weren't just a cute hobby for me. Some were intimidated, others dismissive. Brad, my longest relationship, 8 months during junior year, broke things off saying he needed someone who'd rather go dancing than talk about carburetors on date night. I graduated near the top of my class and landed a solid job at an engineering firm that designed automotive components. The salary was good, but more importantly, it was steady. My Mustang fund grew consistently, and I spent evenings browsing online listings, waiting for the right car to appear. Amanda's post-college life took a different trajectory. After graduating, she moved to Chicago for a marketing job that she claimed was her dream career. Her Instagram showed a glamorous life: rooftop parties, designer clothes, weekend trips to New York. Our parents bragged about her success to their friends, while mentioning my good, stable job as an afterthought. I didn't mind much. I knew what I was working toward. 2 years into my engineering career, with my Mustang fund holding a respectable $12,500, I found it, a 1967 Mustang Fastback listed on an online forum for classic car enthusiasts. The seller, a guy named Rick from a small town about 3 hours away, had inherited it from his uncle, but had neither the interest nor the skills to restore it. The pictures showed a sorry sight: faded navy blue paint peeling in patches, revealing spots of rust underneath. The interior was a disaster, with torn seats, a cracked dashboard, and a missing radio. The engine, according to Rick, hadn't turned over in at least 5 years. It was perfect. I called Rick immediately and arranged to see the car that weekend. I brought along Tony, a coworker who knew classics, to help assess the damage. The car looked even worse in person. A true basket case that would require thousands in parts and hundreds of hours of labor. Tony pulled me aside after inspecting the undercarriage. "Jessica, this is a massive project. The frame has rust, but seems structurally sound. The engine might be salvageable, but no guarantees until we tear it down. You're looking at a year of weekends, minimum, and probably another $10,000 in parts." I nodded, already mentally cataloging what I'd need to order first. "So it's doable." Tony laughed. "For a normal person? No. For you? Probably." I offered Rick $9,000. We settled on $10,500, and the Mustang was mine. Arranging transportation was another expense I hadn't fully considered, but 2 weeks later, a flatbed truck delivered my dream project to my parents' house. I'd been renting an apartment with no garage, so I'd called ahead to ask Dad if I could use their space. He'd agreed, though not enthusiastically. When the car arrived, my parents came outside to see what their daughter had emptied her savings account for. Mom's face fell immediately. "Jessica, honey, you paid actual money for this. Junk?" she asked, circling the car with visible distaste. Dad was more measured, but clearly skeptical. "That's a lot of work, Jess. Are you sure you know what you're getting into?" Amanda, who happened to be visiting that weekend, was less diplomatic. She burst out laughing. "Oh my God, you've been saving for years for this? It doesn't even run. You could have put a down payment on a condo instead of buying literal garbage." I ignored them all and directed the truck driver to position the car in the garage. This was my dream, not theirs, and their approval wasn't necessary. That evening, I created a new Instagram account dedicated to the restoration process and posted the first picture, me standing proudly next to my rusted treasure. I captioned it, "Day 1 with the future beauty." Hashtag Mustang Restoration, hashtag Dream Car, hashtag Classic Cars. To my surprise, it gained over 100 followers within days, mostly fellow car enthusiasts encouraging the project. The restoration began in earnest the following weekend. I started by completely documenting the car, photographing every component before removal, labeling parts, creating spreadsheets to track what needed replacement versus restoration. I built custom shelving in one corner of the garage to organize everything. The first major task was addressing the body rust. I spent 3 weekends just removing the damaged sections, grinding down to clean metal, welding in replacement panels, and applying primer. It was exhausting, frustrating work that often left me questioning my sanity, especially when I discovered additional rust hiding behind what I'd thought were solid panels. Mom would occasionally bring me sandwiches and iced tea, watching silently before returning to the house. Amanda visited less frequently, but when she did, she made it a point to comment on my waste of time. Dad initially kept his distance, but around the 3rd week, I caught him examining my welding work while I was cleaning up. "Not bad," he said, running his finger along a seam. "Your vertical beads are cleaner than your horizontal ones." That was the beginning of his involvement. He never officially joined the project, but he started stopping by while I worked, offering suggestions, occasionally holding parts in place while I secured them, and eventually bringing home small components he thought might be useful. The engine was next, a complete teardown and rebuild. I'd taken dozens of pictures before dismantling it, but still found myself texting Tony at odd hours with questions. When I finally had all the parts cleaned, repaired, or replaced, Dad helped me reassemble it, spending an entire Sunday working side by side with me. The interior restoration consumed another 2 months of weekends. I taught myself upholstery basics through YouTube videos, making plenty of mistakes along the way. The dashboard required careful reconstruction, with each gauge needing cleaning and calibration. Meanwhile, my restoration Instagram account had grown to over 3,000 followers. People sent encouraging messages and sometimes suggested solutions to problems I posted about. A small community formed around the project, with several followers messaging weekly to check on progress. 9 months into the restoration, I was nearly complete. The exterior now gleamed with midnight blue paint that seemed to change depth in different lighting. The chrome accents had been polished to mirror brightness. The interior featured new black leather seats with blue contrast stitching, a restored original steering wheel, and period-correct gauges. The only major task remaining was reinstalling the rebuilt engine and getting it running. That day came on a crisp Saturday morning in October, almost exactly 1 year after I'd brought the car home. Dad and I carefully lowered the engine into place using a cherry picker we'd borrowed from Wilson's garage. After connecting all the components, adding fluids, and double-checking every connection, it was time for the moment of truth. I slid into the driver's seat, feeling the new leather against my back. Dad stood by the open hood, watching intently. Mom and even Amanda had come out to the garage, hanging back by the door. I inserted the key, took a deep breath, and turned it. The engine cranked once, twice, 3 times, then roared to life with a deep, powerful rumble that instantly brought tears to my eyes. Dad whooped with uncharacteristic excitement, raising both hands in victory. Mom applauded politely, while Amanda looked genuinely impressed for the first time. After running the engine for a few minutes to check for leaks or issues, I shut it down and hugged my father fiercely. "We did it, Dad. We actually did it." "You did it, Jesse," he corrected, his voice unusually thick. "This was all you. I just handed you wrenches." The following weekend, after finalizing the last details and obtaining proper registration and insurance, Dad and I took the Mustang for its first real drive. The feeling of the engine's power, the smooth shift of the transmission I'd rebuilt myself, and the admiring glances from other drivers made every hour of work worth it. During our drive, Dad grew quiet for a while before saying, "I was wrong about your junk car, Jesse. This is something special. Not just the car, what you've done with it. I'm sorry I doubted you." I couldn't remember the last time my father had apologized to me for anything. I just nodded, too emotional to speak. An appraiser from the classic car insurance company valued the restored Mustang at $45,000, a figure that shocked my parents and sister. What they'd seen as a foolish expenditure had actually been a smart investment, not to mention the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. The year of weekends, bloody knuckles, and endless frustrations had transformed not just a car, but my relationship with my father and my sense of what I could accomplish. My car restoration triumph coincided with the beginning of Amanda's downfall. About a month after completing the Mustang, I received a call from Mom that Amanda had unexpectedly moved back home from Chicago. Initially, they said it was just a career change, but the truth trickled out over subsequent conversations. Amanda's glamorous Chicago life had been largely fictional, or at least financially unsustainable. Her marketing job paid much less than she led everyone to believe, but she'd been living as though she earned triple her salary. She'd maxed out 5 credit cards, fallen 3 months behind on rent, and finally been evicted from her apartment. The career change was actually her being laid off during company downsizing. I tried to be sympathetic during my weekend visits, but Amanda made it difficult. She'd become bitter, constantly comparing her situation to mine and making snide remarks about how some people have all the luck. This from someone who'd had every advantage, from a fully funded college education to a new car at graduation. Despite the tension, I offered practical advice about budgeting and job hunting. Amanda nodded along, but clearly wasn't interested in the unglamorous work of financial recovery. Instead, she spent hours on the phone with friends, maintaining the fiction that she was just taking a break before her next big opportunity. Meanwhile, I received news that temporarily complicated my own situation. My company needed someone for a 3-month contract position at a client site 2 states away. The assignment came with a substantial completion bonus and would look excellent on my resume. After discussing it with my parents, I decided to take the position. The main concern was my Mustang. My apartment complex had no secure parking, and leaving it on the street for 3 months was unthinkable. Dad suggested keeping it in their garage while I was gone. "We'll keep it safe, Jesse," he promised. "I'll start it up every week and move it around a bit to keep everything lubricated." I created a detailed care sheet with instructions for Dad, covering everything from the proper way to start the cold engine to what fuel stabilizer to add. The day before my departure, I carefully parked my pride and joy in their garage, lovingly covering it with a breathable car cover, and placed the keys in my father's hand. "Take care of her, Dad," I said, giving the covered fender a final pat. "Like she's my own," he replied with a smile. The assignment was intense, with long hours and challenging problems to solve. I called home weekly, always asking about the Mustang along with family news. For the first month, Dad gave detailed reports. He'd started it up. Everything sounded good. He'd even taken it for a short drive around the block to keep the transmission fluid circulating. During the second month, the updates became vaguer. "The car's fine, Jesse," became the standard response, with Dad quickly changing the subject. By the 3rd month, both my parents seemed strangely evasive whenever I mentioned the Mustang. I initially attributed their behavior to being busy with Amanda's situation, but a growing uneasiness prompted me to request video proof that all was well. Dad promised to send it, but never did. After 3 such requests went unfulfilled, I decided to cut my contract short by 2 weeks, still completing all required work, but declining the optional extension the client had offered. I didn't tell my family I was coming home early, planning to surprise them. After driving straight from the airport to my parents' house, I pulled into the driveway at around 7 p.m. on a Thursday evening. The lights were on, and I could see movement in the kitchen, a normal family dinner in progress. I used my key to enter through the side door that led directly to the garage, flipping on the light switch with a smile of anticipation. The smile froze, then dissolved as I stared at the empty space where my Mustang should have been. Dad's sedan and Mom's SUV were parked as usual, but my car, my dream, my year of work, my $45,000 investment, was gone. For several seconds, I couldn't process what I was seeing. Had it been stolen? Had Dad moved it elsewhere for safekeeping? I rushed into the house, bursting into the dining room where my parents and Amanda sat eating pasta. "Where's my car?" I demanded without preamble, my voice tight with panic. The 3 of them froze, forks suspended midair. Mom recovered first, setting down her utensils and adopting the soothing tone she'd used when I was a child with a scraped knee. "Jessica, honey, we were going to tell you when you got back next week. Please sit down so we can explain." "Explain what? Where is my car?" My voice rose with each word. Dad stared at his plate, unable to meet my eyes. Amanda examined her fingernails with sudden interest. Mom sighed deeply. We sold it, Jessica. Amanda needed help and… You what? The room seemed to tilt around me. You sold my car? Without my permission? That's literally illegal. It was for your sister, Mom continued, as if that explained everything. She needed to pay off her debts before they destroyed her credit completely. The collection agencies were calling daily. I turned to my father, who still wouldn't look at me. Dad, you helped me build that car. How could you do this? He finally raised his eyes, and I was surprised to see shame there. I'm sorry, Jessie. Your mother and I discussed it, and family comes first. Amanda needed real help. And I didn't need my own property? The thing I worked for years to create. I turned back to Mom. How much did you sell it for? We got $35,000, she said, chin lifting defiantly. A very fair price considering the circumstances. I did the math quickly. That's $10,000 less than its appraised value. You sold my car at a loss to bail out her shopping addiction. I pointed at Amanda, who finally spoke up. Don't be so dramatic, Jess. It was just a car. You can always buy another old junker and fix it up. You're good at that. Her tone was dismissive, almost bored. Besides, you don't know how hard things have been for me. I was about to have my wages garnished. The casual entitlement in her voice broke something inside me. The rage that flooded through my system was like nothing I'd ever experienced, cold, calculating, and absolute. Where are the papers? I asked with unnatural calm. The title transfer. Bill of sale. Whatever you signed. Mom looked uncomfortable. We handled it privately. Cash sale. The buyer didn't want a lot of paperwork. So you committed tax fraud too. Fantastic. I pulled out my phone and began taking pictures of all three of them at the table. I'm leaving now. Do not call me. Do not text me. Do not come to my apartment. Jessica, don't be ridiculous, Mom began, but I cut her off. The title was in my name. Only my name. What you did wasn't just a betrayal. It was grand theft auto. I need to decide whether to file a police report or handle this privately. The color drained from my father's face. Amanda's expression shifted from annoyance to alarm. Mom stood up, reaching for my arm. You wouldn't report your own family to the police. We were helping Amanda in an emergency. I stepped back from her touch. You stole from me to enable her irresponsibility. Again. My whole life, it's been Amanda needs this or Amanda deserves that. Well, this time, you all crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I walked out despite their protests, got in my rental car, and drove to my friend Megan's apartment. She took one look at my face and opened her door without questions, setting me up on her couch and pouring me a generous glass of wine before I told her everything. That night, I cried until I had no tears left, mourning not just the loss of my car, but the shattering of whatever trust I'd had in my family. The next morning, however, I woke with perfect clarity about what needed to happen next. For 7 days, I maintained complete radio silence with my family despite their increasingly desperate attempts to contact me. My phone logged 27 missed calls from Mom, 15 from Dad, and even 3 from Amanda. Their voicemails evolved from defensive justifications to attempts at guilt-tripping to eventual apologies that still somehow framed me as overreacting. I ignored them all while methodically building my case. My first move was consulting with Stephanie Winters, a law school friend who specialized in property law. Over coffee in her office, I laid out the situation, providing documentation of my ownership, the original title in my name, insurance papers, restoration receipts, even my Instagram documentation of the entire rebuild process. So legally, where do I stand? I asked after explaining everything. Stephanie leaned back in her chair, frowning. This is straightforward from a legal perspective. The vehicle was titled solely to you, which means your parents had no right to sell it. That's conversion of property, basically civil theft. The buyer doesn't have clear title either, which complicates their situation. And my options? You have several, she said, counting them off on her fingers. 1. File a police report for theft. Your parents could face criminal charges. 2. File a civil lawsuit against them for the full value of the vehicle. 3. Attempt to recover the vehicle from the buyer, who would then have recourse against your parents for selling something they didn't own. Or 4. Negotiate a private settlement. I nodded, having already considered these options. I don't want my parents to have a criminal record, but I do want full restitution, and I want my sister to understand the consequences of her actions. Stephanie smiled slightly. Then I suggest option 4 with the clear understanding that options 1 through 3 remain on the table if negotiations fail. Over the next 2 days, I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every aspect of the Mustang's financial value. Original purchase price, $12,500. Parts and materials, $15,800, documented with saved receipts. Specialized labor I couldn't do myself, $5,500, professional paint job and some machine shop work. Market value increase from restoration, $16,700, based on comparable sales. Emotional damages. Technically priceless, but I settled on $5,000. The total came to $55,500, significantly more than the $35,000 they'd received from the sale. I also added a payment schedule with 8% interest, calculating monthly payments over 3 years. Stephanie reviewed my documentation and drafted a formal legal letter outlining the situation, the laws broken, and the proposed resolution. The tone was professional but unmistakably serious, making clear that this was a formal demand for restitution rather than a family negotiation. After a week of silence, I texted my mother, "I'm coming for dinner tomorrow at 7. Have everyone there." She responded immediately with relief, apparently believing this meant reconciliation. I didn't correct her assumption. I arrived at precisely 7 p.m., dressed in business casual attire, carrying a leather portfolio containing my documentation and 3 copies of Stephanie's letter. My parents welcomed me with awkward hugs that I didn't return. Amanda hung back, her expression a mixture of defensiveness and apprehension. Dinner was a tense affair with forced small talk. Dad asked about my work assignment, Mom commented on my haircut, and Amanda remained uncharacteristically quiet. I answered minimally, waiting until we'd finished eating before placing the portfolio on the cleared table. "I've spent the past week consulting with a lawyer and considering my options," I began without preamble. "What you did constitutes grand theft auto, fraud, and tax evasion. I've documented everything." Mom's face paled. "Jessica, we're family. Surely we can work this out without lawyers." "That's exactly what I'm proposing," I replied evenly, opening the portfolio. "I've prepared a private settlement agreement that will keep this matter out of criminal and civil court." I distributed copies of the letter to each of them, then waited silently as they read. Dad's hands shook slightly. Mom's expression hardened with each paragraph. Amanda's eyes widened when she reached the total amount. $55,000, she finally sputtered. "That's insane. The car wasn't worth that much." "It was appraised at $45,000, I countered calmly. "The additional amounts cover specialized labor and emotional damages, which any court would find reasonable given the circumstances." "We can't possibly pay this," Mom said, putting down the letter. "We used the money from the car to pay off Amanda's debts. There's nothing left." "I'm aware," I said. "That's why I've included a payment plan over 3 years. The payments will come from Amanda, not you." "Me?" Amanda's voice rose to a near shriek. "Why should I be responsible? They're the ones who sold your stupid car. Because the money was used to bail you out. Again. You benefited directly from the theft of my property." I turned back to my parents. "You have 3 options. 1. Sign this agreement and adhere to the payment schedule. 2. I file a police report for the theft and let the criminal justice system handle it. 3. I go public with the whole story on social media, to the extended family, to your colleagues and friends, along with pursuing legal action." The silence that followed was absolute. My father was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "You'd really report us to the police?" "Your own parents." I met his gaze steadily. "You really sold the car we built together behind my back?" "Your own daughter." Mom attempted a different approach. "Jessica, I understand you're upset, but this is excessive. Amanda is your sister. She needed help. And that justifies stealing from me." I asked, If she needed a kidney, would you have drugged me and harvested one while I was unconscious? Where exactly is the line for you? Amanda, meanwhile, had moved from shock to outrage. This is ridiculous. I can't afford these payments. I'm still looking for a job, and I have my own expenses. Then I suggest finding a better job and reducing your expenses, I replied coolly. Sell your designer bags. Cancel your subscriptions. Move to a cheaper apartment. Cut up your credit cards. All the things you should have done before ending up in this situation. The argument continued for over an hour. Mom tried emotional manipulation, Dad attempted reason, and Amanda cycled between anger, self-pity, and tearful accusations that I was being cruel. I remained unmoved, repeatedly bringing the conversation back to the three options I'd presented. Finally, exhausted and seeing my determination, Dad picked up a pen. What exactly does this agreement require? I explained the terms. Amanda would make monthly payments of $1,700 for 36 months, with the first payment due in 2 weeks. My parents would serve as guarantors, meaning they would be responsible if she failed to pay. The agreement included consequences for missed payments, including the filing of criminal charges. And if we sign this, you'll forgive us? Mom asked, a slight tremor in her voice. I'll agree not to pursue legal action, I clarified. Forgiveness is a separate matter that will depend on your actions going forward. After further discussion and several teary outbursts from Amanda, all three of them signed the agreement. I signed as well, then took photos of each signature page with my phone before collecting the documents. The first payment is due on the 15th, I reminded them, standing to leave. I expect it to be on time. As I walked to the door, Amanda called after me, her voice breaking. I don't even know how I'm going to make these payments. You're destroying my life. I turned back one last time. No, Amanda. You destroyed your own life with irresponsible decisions. I'm just refusing to let you destroy mine in the process. The immediate aftermath of our agreement was precisely the family chaos I had anticipated. The day after the confrontation, Dad called, breaking my request for no contact, to tell me that Mom and he had been arguing constantly. Mom blamed him for not standing firm against me, while he blamed her for suggesting the car sale in the first place. Your mother hasn't spoken directly to me since you left last night, he said, sounding exhausted. She slept in the guest room. I'm sorry about your marriage troubles, I replied, not entirely sincerely, but that's between you and Mom. Jesse, isn't there any way we can reduce the payments? Amanda's been looking at her finances, and she's really struggling to see how she can manage this. The struggle will be educational for her, I said. She needs to face real consequences for once. Similar calls came from Mom, who attempted different tactics. From reminiscing about my childhood to suggesting I was being controlled by that lawyer friend, to eventually breaking down in tears about how this would tear our family apart. I remained resolute through it all. You tore the family apart when you stole from me. I'm just refusing to be the only one who suffers for it. Amanda, meanwhile, was forced into action by the looming first payment. According to Dad, she'd listed her designer handbags and shoes on various resale sites, moved from our parents' house to a shared apartment with 2 roommates, and taken a job as an administrative assistant at a local insurance office. A position far less glamorous than her previous marketing role, but one that offered steady income. The ripple effects soon spread beyond our immediate family. Aunt Carolyn, Mom's sister, called to tell me I was being heartless. Your sister made some mistakes, but family helps family without keeping score, she lectured. Uncle Steve, on the other hand, firmly took my side. About time someone held Amanda accountable, he said when he invited me for coffee. Your parents have been enabling her for years. Maybe this will finally break the cycle. These divided reactions played out across the extended family, creating awkward dynamics at a cousin's birthday party I attended 3 weeks after the confrontation. Family members quite literally took sides of the room, with pro-Amanda relatives clustered near the kitchen while those supporting me gathered by the living room windows. I spent most of the event chatting with my cousin's in-laws, neutral parties unaware of the drama. Through all this turmoil, one bright spot emerged exactly 15 days after our agreement. A certified check for $1,700 arrived in my mailbox, Amanda's first payment. I hadn't been entirely sure she would follow through, half expecting excuses or delays. The on-time payment suggested she was taking the agreement seriously, perhaps understanding the potential consequences of default for the first time in her life. While dealing with family drama, I also began a search for my Mustang's new owner. The car community proved surprisingly small and well-connected. After posting inquiries on several forums and making calls to local classic car clubs, I received a message from a fellow enthusiast who had recently seen a midnight blue '67 Mustang Fastback at a Cars and Coffee event in Lakeville, about 40 minutes from my parents' home. Guy who had it was named Edward Pearson, the message read. Older gentleman, seemed really proud of it, though he admitted he'd just bought it and hadn't done the restoration himself. With this lead, finding Edward Pearson wasn't difficult. He was listed as the president of the Southern Minnesota Classic Car Association, with contact information available on their website. I debated how to approach him, concerned he might be defensive upon learning he'd purchased a car through a fraudulent sale. Finally, I decided on honesty and sent him an email explaining who I was and requesting a meeting. His response came the next day, "Ms. Mitchell, I'd be happy to meet." I had no idea about the circumstances of the sale. Your parents presented themselves as the legal owners. I still have the car and would like to discuss this situation face to face. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. Edward turned out to be a distinguished man in his late 60s with silver hair and the weathered hands of someone who'd spent a lifetime working on engines. After introductions and ordering coffee, he got straight to the point. "I want to clarify that I had no knowledge of any impropriety in the sale," he began. "Your father presented the car as a family project that they needed to sell because of your relocation for work." "I believe you," I assured him. "My parents are the ones who acted fraudulently, not you." Relief crossed his face. "Thank you for that. Now, regarding the car, I understand you've reached some agreement with your family." I nodded, explaining the restitution arrangement without going into personal details. "I'm not here to demand the car back, Mr. Pearson. Legally, I probably could, but that would just create another victim in this situation. You purchased in good faith." His expression softened. "That's very reasonable of you. I must say, when I got your email, I was worried you'd come with a lawyer and a demand letter. That approach is reserved for my family," I said with a wry smile. "They earned it." We spent the next hour talking about the car. I showed him pictures of the restoration process on my phone, and he shared his admiration for the work I'd done. Eventually, he made an unexpected offer. "I can see how much that car means to you," he said. "While I'm not prepared to sell it back right now, I've grown rather attached to it myself. I'd like to propose something. You can have visitation rights, so to speak. Come see it, drive it occasionally if you'd like. And I promise that if I ever do decide to sell, you'll have first option to buy it back." Tears pricked at my eyes at this kindness from a stranger. "I'd like that very much, Mr. Pearson." "Edward, please," he insisted, then added with a gentle smile, "the car community takes care of its own." We exchanged contact information and made plans for me to see the Mustang the following weekend. As we parted, he mentioned one more thing. "Your father called me yesterday, actually. Wanted to know if I'd consider selling the car back to them. Said they'd made a terrible mistake." This revelation stunned me. "What did you tell him?" "That I wasn't interested in selling, but even if I were, I'd only sell it back to you, the person who actually restored it." He patted my shoulder. "Thought you should know they're at least trying to make amends, even if they're going about it the wrong way." This information gave me much to think about on the drive home. My parents hadn't mentioned this attempt to me, perhaps fearing my reaction or perhaps planning to surprise me if they'd been successful. Either way, it suggested the situation was affecting them more deeply than I'd realized. This impression was confirmed later that week when Dad asked if he could meet me for lunch, just the two of us. We met at a diner halfway between our workplaces, the awkwardness palpable as we studied our menus with unusual intensity. After ordering, Dad folded his hands on the table, looking older than I remembered. "I owe you an apology, Jesse. A real one. Not just because we got caught or because of the legal agreement." I waited, saying nothing. "I failed you," he continued, voice rough with emotion. "Failed to stand up for what was right." Failed to protect something I knew was precious to you. Failed to be the father I should have been. He paused, collecting himself. We've always treated you as the strong one, the responsible one who didn't need help or protection. It was unfair, and I see that now. Why did you do it, Dad? I asked, the question that had been haunting me. We built that car together. How could you sell it behind my back? He stared at his coffee for a long moment. There's no good answer. Your mother was insistent that we needed to save Amanda from her financial mess. I disagreed initially, but then I gave in, as I always do with your mother's demands. It was easier than fighting, than being the bad guy. He looked up, meeting my eyes. It's no excuse. I betrayed your trust, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. It wasn't a perfect apology. He still partially shifted blame to my mother, but the genuine remorse in his eyes began to soften something inside me. Not enough for forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps a start. 6 months after the confrontation, my life had transformed in unexpected ways. Amanda had maintained perfect payment compliance, depositing each month's amount on or before the due date. Through mutual friends, I heard she'd received a promotion at the insurance office and had started taking night classes in accounting, apparently developing an interest in financial management after her harsh lesson. I had moved from Megan's couch to a small house rental with something I'd never had before, a 2-car garage of my own. Using the first few payments from Amanda, I'd equipped the garage with proper tools, a small compressor, and basic auto shop equipment. Weekend mornings found me there, tinkering with small projects, initially just to keep my skills sharp. Almost accidentally, I began helping friends with their car issues, a brake job here, a transmission fluid change there. Word spread, and soon friends of friends were asking if I could look at their vehicles. What started as casual favors evolved into a side business I called Mitchell Mechanical, operating evenings and weekends around my engineering job. I created a simple website and social media accounts for the business, sharing tips and documenting interesting repairs. To my surprise, the following grew quickly, especially when I highlighted women's empowerment in automotive work. Several mothers brought their teenage daughters to watch me work, hoping to inspire them in a male-dominated field. My parents continued their attempts at reconciliation. Mom had shifted from defensiveness to a sort of muted acceptance that things had fundamentally changed between us. Dad made more consistent efforts, occasionally stopping by my garage with a tool he thought I might need or sending links to interesting automotive articles. Our relationship remained cordial but distant, like friendly acquaintances rather than family. Amanda's evolution proved the most surprising. Around the 1-year mark of our agreement, she asked to meet for coffee, our first one-on-one interaction since the confrontation. I agreed with some trepidation, unsure what to expect. She arrived on time, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater rather than the designer outfits she'd once prioritized. After awkward greetings, she got straight to the point. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, she began, fidgeting with her coffee cup. I need to apologize. Not because Mom and Dad want me to, or because of the payments, but because I've realized how selfish and entitled I've been, not just about the car, but about everything. I listened skeptically, having heard versions of this before when she wanted something. The past year has been humbling, she continued. Working a job I initially thought was beneath me, living with roommates instead of in my own place, budgeting for the first time in my life. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. It's been good for me, Jess. I'm not saying I enjoy the financial strain, but I respect myself more now. I'm actually proud of what I'm accomplishing on my own. I'm glad to hear that, I said cautiously. I know we can't go back to how things were, she acknowledged. I broke your trust, and so did Mom and Dad. But I'm hoping that maybe, eventually, we can build something new. Something better, based on mutual respect instead of whatever dysfunctional dynamic we had before. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the manipulative sister I'd grown up with. Perhaps the consequences had actually catalyzed real growth. I'd like that, I admitted. But it will take time. She nodded. I know. I just wanted you to know I'm committed to making things right, not just financially, but personally too. This conversation marked a turning point in our healing process. While we didn't suddenly become best friends, we began rebuilding a relationship based on more honest foundations. Amanda even volunteered to help with simple tasks at my garage one weekend, laughing at her own clumsiness, but showing genuine interest in learning basics. Around this time, my side business gained unexpected attention when a local morning show did a feature on women in traditionally male professions. The 5-minute segment about Mitchell Mechanical led to a flood of new clients and social media followers. I found myself considering whether my side hustle might actually have potential as a full-time business. The universe seemed to confirm this direction when I discovered another project car, a 1969 Mustang Mach 1 with significant front-end damage, but a solid structure and minimal rust. The owner, a widow selling her late husband's unfinished project, accepted my offer of $8,000, considerably below market value, but fair given the extensive work needed. I approached this restoration differently than my first Mustang, documenting every step for my growing social media audience and involving followers in decisions about color schemes and modifications. The community aspect transformed what could have been a solitary pursuit into a shared journey, with regular followers offering suggestions and encouragement. One evening, while wrestling with particularly stubborn suspension components, I received an unexpected call from Edward Pearson, the man who had purchased my original Mustang. "Jessica," he said after pleasantries, "I've been thinking about our arrangement regarding your car. Is everything all right with it?" I asked, immediately concerned. "The car is perfect," he assured me. "But my situation has changed. My son in California has been diagnosed with a condition that will require my help for the foreseeable future. I'm relocating next month to be near him." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "Thank you. The thing is, I can't take all my cars with me. I've sold 2 already, and I've been wrestling with what to do about the Mustang." He paused. "I remembered my promise that you'd have first option if I ever sold it. Are you interested?" My heart leaped, then faltered as I considered my financial situation. Between the house rental, garage equipment, and the new project car, my savings were depleted. "I absolutely am, but I might need time to arrange financing." "No rush," Edward said kindly. "And I should mention, I'd let it go for what I paid for it. Seems only right, given the circumstances." The $35,000 price tag was still substantial, but significantly below the car's current market value. It presented me with a difficult decision. Pursue getting my original car back, or focus on my growing business and new project. The emotional pull of my first restoration was powerful, but I'd also begun creating a new path forward that excited me in different ways. 2 years after the confrontation that changed everything, I stood in my now thriving garage business, watching as Amanda handed me the final payment check with a smile. Mitchell Mechanical had grown from a weekend side hustle to my full-time occupation, with a client list so extensive I'd had to hire 2 part-time assistants. My engineering firm had been understanding when I gave notice, even contracting me for occasional consulting work. "I can't believe it's the final payment," Amanda said, looking around at what her restitution had helped build. "In a weird way, I'm almost going to miss our payment schedule. It was the most responsible I've ever been about anything." I laughed, taking the check. "You could always start investing the same amount each month. Build yourself a nice nest egg." "Already planned," she replied with unexpected seriousness. "My accounting certificate program finishes next month, and I've been interviewing for financial analyst positions. Turns out I'm actually good with numbers when I bother to pay attention to them." Our relationship had evolved into something neither of us could have predicted, a cautious friendship built on newfound mutual respect. Amanda had transformed from the entitled, impulsive sister I'd grown up with into a thoughtful adult who considered consequences before actions. Her designer wardrobe had been replaced by practical business attire. Her social media presence had shifted from carefully curated glamour shots to posts about financial literacy for young adults. Later that evening, Mom and Dad came by for the small celebration dinner I'd arranged to mark the completion of our agreement. Things remained somewhat strained with Mom, who had never fully accepted her role in the betrayal, maintaining that she'd acted for the family. Dad, however, had worked steadily to rebuild our relationship, eventually becoming a regular fixture at my garage, helping with complex jobs and offering guidance to my younger clients. Over dessert, Dad raised his glass in a toast to lessons learned and to Jessica, who had the courage to teach them. Amanda clinked her glass against mine. And to second chances, Mom added softly, and to family finding its way back together. I nodded, acknowledging the sentiment while recognizing we were still on that journey. The experience had fundamentally changed all of us, some more willingly than others. As for Edward Pearson's offer to sell back my original Mustang, I had made what felt like the right decision for my new chapter. After much consideration, I arranged financing and purchased the car, but not for myself. I gifted it to Dad with a clear understanding. It remained legally mine, but he would be its caretaker, driving and maintaining it as we'd originally planned to do together. The gesture bridged something between us that words couldn't reach. The day I handed him the keys, he broke down completely, the first time I'd ever seen my father cry. I don't deserve this, he said through tears. It's not about deserving, I replied. It's about moving forward. He takes immaculate care of the car, bringing it to my garage for service and proudly displaying it at local car shows where he tells everyone, my daughter built this. It's become our shared passion again, but on healthier terms. The experience taught me invaluable lessons about boundaries, consequences, and the courage to stand up for myself, even against those I love. I learned that true family support means lifting each other up to be better, not enabling destructive patterns. Most surprisingly, I discovered that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted can lead you to what you truly need. My business continues to grow, specializing in classic car restoration and mechanical education for women interested in automotive work. The damaged Mach 1 I purchased is now fully restored, serving as both my daily driver and a rolling advertisement for what's possible when you refuse to give up. Have you ever had to stand up to family who betrayed your trust? What boundaries did you set, and how did it change your relationships? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey of standing up for yourself even against family, please like this video, subscribe to see more stories about setting boundaries, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to demand respect, even from those closest to you. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the path to healing starts with having the courage to say enough.